Hey everybody, it's Goose, and welcome back to me chronicling the escapades of my chaotic-ass party. Last time, during the first session, the party managed to escape from underneath an arena, and while doing so, ruined my plans to throw them to the lions as their first encounter. And honestly, they've just kept that energy going. So last session ended with them hiding out under a dock with some NPCs. And they were talking and decided to head to Yardstick, the Kobold Bard's master's house, which was nearby. And so I'm thinking, okay, awesome. They can escape from the city and travel there, and I'll have some stuff going on there prepped, so the session can last as much as it needs to. So I spend a lot of time prepping, like, okay, here's the city they're in, here's the districts, here's how many guards will be in this district, and like how they'll patrol. And like if one group of guards sees the party and raises the alarm, it'll summon more guards in this many minutes and stuff. And I was pretty happy with it. And I also drew up a map for the entrance to the city, the big gates, and like, alright, here's where the guards will be, here's the wall, here's the thing that you pull to bring the portcullis down or whatever. So, like, I have all this city escape stuff planned. So, jump to the session, and it starts, and it dawns on the party that it might be kind of hard to get out of the city, thanks to some good intelligence rolls and the player character's familiarity with the city. So they're thinking, okay, here's where we are, here's the map, here's the rough idea of how many cards. And then Nephis, my partner's character, my partner turns to me and says, "You've watched the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, right?" And it takes me a moment to fully process what she's saying and what she means by that. And the other party members are like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool." I'm racking my brain like, "Oh, what?" And then she shows me the picture of that Pirates of the Caribbean thing where they take a rowboat, flip it over, and walk along the bottom of a river. I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. And of course, I had no way. I did not prep this. I did not even consider this as an option. But I can't just tell them no. So I had, of course, they were at the docks, and so there was one rowboat there, but it was a pretty small boat. It was just there for flavor, and with the party and the NPCs, there's like 8 people, and I doubt 8 people would be able to fit under one tiny little rowboat. So they realized they had to grab another boat somewhere. And I had 2 buildings set up that I had a rough idea of, like, oh, like a bait shop kind of thing, and then like a boat repair. So it's like, okay, I could definitely put another boat in one of these buildings and have them find it. And of course, I had some guards patrolling the area because during their escape from the arena and like their flight from that area and towards the docks, they kind of biffed their stealth checks. So people kind of knew where their location was. So these guards are just these two guards are wandering around the docks, and the party does pretty well on the stealth checks to move under a closer dock. But one of them biffs it, Arachne biffs it just enough that, like, kind of has a little bit of a noise, and the guards go to investigate, kind of wander over that way and investigate it. They don't have a very good idea of where this noise came from, so they're just kind of poking around the other dock, not really seeing much. And so the party splits to try to break into one of the buildings while Nephis tries to unhook the boat from the other dock. So the gang, pretty much with the help of a pretty good sleight of hand roll, managed to pick the lock of this building, which I allowed because, I mean, none of them have these tools, and it's kind of unfair to, like, lock them out of a building with essential stuff in it. So they break into this building, and while they're doing that, Nephis, trying to get the boat, absolutely fails their stealth check. Like, cut their hand while trying to cut the rope and just yell, "Ah!" and jump in the water with a big splash. And of course that draws the guards, because, you know, of course it does. And so my partner turns to me and says, "Okay, I have my familiar Nigel the crab in this jar with me, so can I open the jar and have him scuttle on the beach and throw a rock into the water?" And I'm like, okay, yeah. And I, like, try to figure out what role that would be to, like, try to convince these two that this tiny little fiddler crab is the one making big splooshing noises in the water. So I have a roll performance, and this crab is just a master of the theater. Nigel was a born actor. Rolls a 22 on this performance check and hucks this huge rock. This tiny little fiddler crab hucks this huge rock into the water, and the guards are just like, this seems suspicious, but I don't know enough about crabs to question it. Oh, Nephis also managed to earlier use their Triton ability to manipulate water to create a fog cloud and confuse those guards earlier to help the gang move closer to the buildings. So that works, and the rest of the party is in this boat repair kind of building, and they find 3 boats in various states of being broken and being fixed. So Ryuu, I will figure out which one it is eventually, I'm so sorry, manages to figure out which one of the boats is the most watertight, and they decide, hey, we're gonna need a better distraction to get this big unwieldy boat out of here. And so Viren, the trickster domain cleric, who had already transformed himself with disguised self into a raggedy old man, says, "Oh, I can go act drunk and distract those guards." And so he does, and he does a really good job of bluffing these guards and, you know, really selling the drunk old man who is convinced that the river is the town square, and manages to make a bunch of dex saves to, like, not get caught, basically, like, dodging and weaving, and the guards just cannot get a hold of this stinky old man. So the party successfully gets the boat to the water and uses message to say, okay, hey Viren, if you lose them, we'll meet back up with you. And I have them all have them all roll strength checks to make sure that they can like hold the boats down underwater, because I watched that episode of Mythbusters where they said, oh yeah, this is actually impossible to do, but like I'm not gonna let physics get in the way of a really cool idea. So I have them make strength checks, and they do pretty well. So this mental image here of this Triton, Nephis, holding on to the rope at the front of the first boat, and these three people in the first boat, and the last person there, Yardstick, is holding on to the rope of the second boat. And just this caravan of rowboats underwater, just turtling it, takes them probably 2.5 to 3 hours to move that far, because it's really unwieldy. And like, I had this whole encounter set up of like, oh, here's how they can get past the wall. And they just Pirates of the Caribbean it, and I love it, honestly. I'm a little bit, disappointed that I didn't get to use the stuff I came up with for the City Escape, but who am I to argue with an idea like that? So, Viren manages to lose the guards in the residential area and meets back up with the party pretty easily, gets under the last boat, and they get out of the city that way. So they surface on this sandy outcropping outside the city, and it's like, okay, we're thinking of going to Yardstick's master's house, and it's early morning, so it's like, are we gonna travel at night or during the day? And they decide to travel during the day because they don't think that their faces would be in broad circulation, which is fair. So I have them travel for a day and, roll to see what kind of stuff they encounter, and they just see just one wagon, and the guy on the wagon just kind of slows down so he doesn't hit them with gravel, sees that they're a group of like mostly really, really weird races, and just kind of speeds back up. And I mean, they don't try to hide from it or anything, so it's pretty uneventful. So they bunker down for the night, and Nephis really wants to investigate this box that Banner has from last time that they learned about. And at this point, I've used this box as seeds to here's how the big main plot's gonna go down. So this is a plot important item, right? And it's a puzzle box, so they desperately want to open it. So I'm like, okay, make that intelligence roll to open it. And I'd already thought like, hey, this box probably has a key somewhere. And I'm like, okay. And they do not have the key. And Nephis does really well on the intelligence check to open the box. And so it's like, okay, yeah, the sliding levers, you manage to get everything into place, and you hear this click, and the dragon mouth carved in the front of the box opens, and it seems like it's waiting for something, because it needs a key. And since minor spoilers, since this box is the blue dragon box, electricity, when Nephis pokes their finger in the dragon's mouth, they get zapped a little bit. Like, not enough to do damage, but this is a blue dragon from a blue dragon, and they have electricity. So it's like, okay, yeah. Like, they have a really good idea of how this box works, but it's obvious that they're still missing something that they need in order to open it. And so, you know, after getting this good idea of what's needed for the puzzle box, they ask Banner, the mute tabaximan whose box it is, if they know anything about what needs to be in there. And so Banner takes a piece of paper and writes out something to the effect of, oh yeah, it needs a key. Nobody I know has ever been able to open it, and it's been passed down through my family for generations. And so Nephis asks, where do you think the key might be? And me as a DM, like, churning in my head, it's like, oh, I'd like them to end up in Cathay, the big dragon city that I built this whole setting around. And so, like, it's like, oh, things like, I don't know, but things like that tend to end up in Cathay. And so Nephis, it's like, oh, so we're gonna go there. And as a DM, I was just like, yes, yes. So they settle down for the night. The party settles down, splits into watches, and the first two pass pretty uneventfully. I'm rolling to see what happens, and the third watch, it's like, oh, I knew that I wanted to get the dragon cult involved, and I knew building this session that I wanted them to, you know, get ambushed by some cult members. And so during this third watch, it's Nephis and the NPC Fen standing watch, and Nephis hears some cracking in the bushes, and so they send out the theater crab Nigel to go take a look. And of course it's a fight with some cultists, so they wake up. Everybody, the whole party, does a pretty good job of fighting these cultists off. And thanks to Arachne, the dwarf druids, and Tangle, they managed to capture one of the cultists alive. And they spend a good half hour just tormenting this man. I don't say poor man because he was out to kill them. He is part of an evil cult, but like tormenting this poor man. And they made me name him. His name's Leon, and through him they're able to get just a little bit of information that, like, the cult is after the box, and that they're sent by somebody with the initials SH, and through a note found on one of the dead cultists, figure out that inside the box is somehow blood. And you know, I know what that means because I'm the DM and I've planned this out by now. And they spend quite a bit of time like talking about how could there be blood in this box, which was a lot of fun to listen to. So after they get pretty much everything they're gonna get out of this man, and figure out that, oh, this is Cult of Tiamat that we're dealing with, they then spend quite a bit of time talking about what they're going to do with him, because they're wanted now both by the government of Anetham, the city that they just escaped from, and from this cult. So there's a lot of talk of like, do we kill him? Hey bud, are you gonna rat us out if we let you go? And it was brought up like, hey, we could make sure he doesn't talk, which I took to mean like, oh, someone has a spell of like Gias or something. I don't know why I thought that. They're level 2, but has a spell to like make sure he doesn't talk. But nope, they were just talking about cutting his tongue out, which they didn't end up doing. They ended up leaving him like tied to a tree with a ration bar. Nephis made sure that he had a ration bar. And like Viren, who had done most of like the bad cop, it's like, I wanna fuck with him just one last time before we leave. And I'm like, okay. It's like, and his player says, I'm just gonna make him think just for 1 second. I'm gonna take the ration bar off his head, open his mouth like I'm actually going to cut out his tongue, and then just shove the ration bar in there. And then we all just scatter. So this is just making, and they do this, and I'm just thinking, wow, this party's gonna have such an awful reputation. Like, they're gonna be, like, feared by the common folk once this gets out. And it's just starting to get me to think, like, wow, they're going to have, if they don't leave the country, which it sounds like they're planning to, but if they don't leave the country soon, like, people will see a single glimpse of like Nephis's fins or Ryu's scaliness and just immediately get out the pitchforks and torches. Like, they killed a bunch of guards, they like, of course Leon's not gonna say, oh yeah, I was part of a cult that attacked them, but like, Leon's gonna say they almost cut my fucking tongue out. Like, the general populace is not gonna have a very good view on this party. And now I'm wondering, oh, how much of this do Yardstick's masters know by now? Because if you remember, the gang didn't really hide from the road, and they passed a couple people heading towards Anetham on the road. So, like, I don't know if they thought about this, but those people are gonna get to Anetham and be like, yeah, we saw these people on the road. And so I think that there's gonna be some trouble for them in the future. I haven't quite figured out what yet, but I have about a week to plan it. So I'm looking forward to figuring out what's gonna go on with them. Oh, and pretty much everyone's sent me like the NPCs that I asked for a while ago. So in the future I'll have a lot of stuff to base stuff off of, and since the party's heading towards Yardstick's Master's Villa, I'm going to use the information Yardstick's player gave me to make this as, let's say, emotionally resonant as possible. I'm going to take the characters that were provided to me and do something with them. I've yet to figure out exactly what, but I'm starting to get a few ideas. So with that, I'm gonna call it for this week. So see you next time, and happy adventuring.